Today we're going to talk about copywork and teenagers. If you have any familiarity with the Charlotte Mason method, you'll know that copywork is a daily habit. It's part of the daily routine. It's going to be teaching spelling, punctuation, writing, all those things. And it's really easy to think of it as mainly being a benefit to young children who are learning to write. And if you go online, you'll see a lot of principles which are aimed at really 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. Today I want to talk about our teenagers because I am fully convinced that our young adults need to keep doing this. You don't want to stop the copywork when they get to age 10 or 11. We want to keep going because it's going to develop them into master writers. When they're younger, copywork is developing that basic skill of learning how to write properly. Now, once they're confident, they can write a whole paragraph, we actually want to keep going because it's going to develop some other skills in them. Did you know that authors like Robert Louis Stevenson, even J.R. Tolkien, Benjamin Franklin, Virginia Woolf, they continued to do copywork as adults because they recognized the value that it brought to their own writing skills. And this shouldn't surprise us because imitation has always been something that the great artists have used to help develop their skill. So here are my top 5 tips on making copywork effective for our teenagers. And I have two daughters, they are 13 and 14, and they are both still doing copywork every day. So firstly, you want them to be copying around a whole paragraph of text. Normally by 11 or 12, children should be able to do this in about 10 minutes. Sometimes a paragraph is one single sentence. Some authors use about 4 semicolons in a single sentence, and when you look at it, it is a whole paragraph. So that's awesome. Don't underestimate the power of copying one really complex sentence. This is really going to expose them to more nuanced use of punctuation, including dialogue, and knowing how to punctuate and use dialogue well is a really important skill. Secondly, we want to use texts that have more rich and descriptive language and more challenging vocabulary. This automatically is going to introduce them to more mature ideas as well. We should aim to expose them to more complex vocabulary, more challenging sentence structure, and more mature ideas. This will increase the word bank that they now have internally that they can then use in their creative writing. And texts with more descriptive language and more complex sentence structure normally tackle more mature ideas, which can be really, really good for discussion and for meditation. By meditation, I mean when you're copying something out, you're thinking about it, or you should be thinking about it. Thirdly, we want to use a mix of styles, and this is a really, really good time to introduce some new genres to our children. For example, essays. Copying out an essay is a really good way to learn the art of essay writing. It's also a great time to get a child to copy out a whole speech. Not all in one sitting because that would obviously take way too long. But speeches are a really powerful form of communication. Obviously they're normally delivered orally, but even when they're written down on paper, we see how the punctuation is used to communicate how something would have been spoken. Different genres of writing can also introduce our children to historical information and historical characters, and they will just internalize a lot of information without even realizing it. Different styles is also going to introduce us to different voices. Sometimes we might have the first person, sometimes it might be the third person. We're going to have past tense, future tense, present tense. So my daughters copy out every week a mixture of literature, some Shakespeare, some essays, some speeches, and even letters, because letters are a really powerful form of communication. That's something that as adults we need to engage in, even though today a lot of it is an email. Still, getting a child to copy out a really well written letter is a really good idea. Number 4 is to explain the context of the text. So my children are normally copying something that's a bit longer and it's broken up into small chunks, so they do 10 minutes. For example, let's say that this term my daughter is copying out sections from The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. Every week she's just going to tackle one little section of that play. Now it's really, really helpful to read a story of the play to begin with so that the student can fully grasp what's actually going on. Another thing is with speeches. So for example, my children copied out Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, I Have a Dream. We listened to that on an audio recording first, just so that they could grasp how it sounded when it was being spoken, but also what was the context in terms of the civil rights movement in the US at the time. This is really important because then the student can understand the significance of the text and their kind of gallery that they have in their mind of history and geography. Lastly, if possible, you want your child to be copying out text from what they are working through in their readings. This means that they've been making their own choices and their own selections about what they're reading. This was something Charlotte Mason encouraged in general. I think it's easier to do with teenagers because they can be that little bit more self-organized. Children should in theory then take greater interest in what they are copying if they've made the choice for themselves. Some children are equally happy to have the choice made for them. My children, I've made the choice for them simply to make the day run really smoothly. The key thing though is to have as much connection as possible between their readings, which is part of their lessons, and what they're copying through the copywork in terms of their writing. So for example, if my child is studying Macbeth that term for their Shakespeare, then they'll be doing Macbeth for copywork. So many of you will know that I created my own copywork program. It's called Copywork Cave, and the level 3 is really aimed at that 10 to 14 age group. And when I was pulling together the text that we were going to be using for level 3, I had all of these principles in mind. And level 3 has got 6 different collections, so it spans over 2 years because each collection is about 12 weeks. So collections 1 to 3 is a whole year, and collections 4 to 6 is another whole year. So there's about 2 years worth of material. And my daughters are now at the very end of this. They are at collection 6. And when I look back over what they've actually written over the last 2 years through the copywork, I'm really, really chuffed. So here's some of the highlights of what my children have copied through level 3 of Copywork Cave. For literature, we had Treasure Island, Pride and Prejudice, Jungle Book, Helen Keller's The Story of My Life, Gabriel and the Hour Book, and Young Robin Hood. They've copied speeches from antiquity through to modernity, including Winston Churchill, Queen Elizabeth, Abraham Lincoln, Nelson Mandela, Demosthenes, Pericles, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and more. They've copied letters and essays and historical documents. For example, a letter by Leonardo da Vinci, a letter by Albert Einstein, a letter by William Wilberforce about the abolition of the slave trade, the letter by President George Washington, essay by Virginia Woolf. For poets, they have copied Robert Frost, Louisa May Alcott, Wordsworth, Longfellow, Carl Sandburg, Rudyard Kipling, and the ever creative with punctuation, Emily Dickinson. For Shakespeare, they have copied excerpts from Hamlet, from Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant of Venice, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, The Taming of the Shrew, and Macbeth. They've occasionally also copied out from the Christian collection, which has an optional Bible passage in it. So those of you who are interested in including some Bible in your weekly routine, the level 3 Copywork Cave curriculum includes the Sermon on the Mount, Romans 12, excerpts from the Gospel of Mark, the trial of Paul before Governor Felix, the story of David and Goliath, Isaiah 53, Ephesians 1, and chapters 1 and 2 of the Gospel of Luke, telling about the birth and early life of Christ. So that's what you'll find in Copywork Cave level 3. I will put a discount code in the description below for 20% off. Be sure to use that at the website checkout. If you don't want to use Copywork Cave and your child is well capable of making their own choice over what they should write, then that's awesome. So let this video just be an encouragement to you to not stop on the copywork. Keep it going, just push the boat out, make it longer, make the language more complex, give them more mature ideas. It's all going to bear fruit in their writing in the long run. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. I always love to answer your questions. Bye for now.